Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the pretzels, as Ryan said, and the other snacks out there. So as we capped up in the last session, we heard a lot of the visions and where we're going. In keeping with the theme that Yash talked about at the beginning, now we're going to wrap up today and show you a little bit of how. So in this session, we have 3 different presentations from 3 different groups that we've been working with to sort of connect the digital CMC ecosystem or show the first version. So as I mentioned a few times, last year we walked away saying we should do this, but no one had done it. And this year we're going to show you that we have done it. And I think it keeps with the theme that we heard from Dan, like it's there, the technology's there, it is possible. It's not going to be the barrier as we go forward, but we're excited to show you what it looks like. And so we'll go through these 3 presentations, same panel, and then have a little bit of break, and then off to a lovely dinner and evening celebration. So first up is a man that needs no introduction because you just heard from him. Todd Leibrook, again, Digitization Portfolio Director at Siemens. So Todd, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks everybody again. So, all right, there we go. So what we're going to talk about is, if you remember back to my favorite busy slide showing the kind of the product life cycle along with the connectivity of the digital lab to create that PD recipe, and then the PD recipe, if you remember, promotes up to the CMC module, which is QbD. And so we engaged with QbDVision probably 6-9 months ago to start this POC of showing the art of possible. And yes, it may look simplistic, but it's also, on the other hand, pretty huge that we were able to integrate these 2 systems at this version that we have. And if you see, we have first of all, the QbDVision application passing down product and process requirements management or templates. And that's the key, is that we don't want to just have the R&D scientists just start developing and defining early process definition workflows in the lab without being constrained or about, again, some sort of process action library or template. And that's what we went for here, is that, and I think it was also mentioned several times before, is what is the end goal target? The end goal target is to fulfill the requirements of CMC so you can electronically file for the submissions. And so we thought, well, instead of just having it be a one-way, we should start with QbD and send down that template into our RiffynX product so that we can focus on process design and characterization, but based on a template, based on a set of data standards. And then inside of Riffyn, this is where we continue to define that process definition, design of experiments, the execution of experiments, the analytical results, and really it's an iteration. You're going to constantly be iterating. And then once we go through that first pass of iteration, we're going to pass that control strategy back up to QbD. And again, that control strategy consists of CPPs, CQAs, BOM, BOP, context, and probably other elements that yet we haven't thought of yet. But we need to have that data mapping as the major starting point for this integration. So this is the introduction. And then, so what are we doing, or how are we doing it? I guess that's what I should be saying. So again, it's a process template coming down with, again, process operations, unit ops, intermediates, materials, process parameters, CQAs, CPPs, CMAs, and then the process characterization back up. So again, it's that iteration. It's going to be constantly iterating, because as the scientist is either looking for a new drug or he's found the drug molecule, but he's trying to do what-if scenarios on maybe reducing cost by switching out materials or by changing set points and trying to increase yield. So it's a set of constant what-if scenarios. And in order to support that is this kind of integration showing iterative incremental life cycle. And so what you'll see is the two windows and the mappings. So we will show you in a live demo the process steps and executions. So from one workflow set to the other workflow set, resources, equipment, assets, targets, and again, CPP, CQAs, and CMAs, material attributes. So I'll bring Luke up, and then we will go through this integrated demo, proof of concept.
Awesome. Okay. So I think most of you are familiar with QbDVision, or maybe have seen it at some point, hopefully. But I'm just going to show the integration between the two systems and the middleware that we use to connect that. So here's QbDVision. We're logged into our demo environment. You'll be seeing a little more of this tomorrow, too. We have built out the aging case study, which is built off the Nimble data. So this is a common one that we use. And over here, we're going to go into our process module, where we've laid out what that looks like in terms of the overall process that's defined in the case study. We've expanded it a little bit because it was light on certain sets of details. But you can see here, you're going to be using QbDVision first to get the project started. So maybe you're working from a template, as Todd said. So maybe you have best practices for gene therapy or mRNA or whatever the asset is that you're developing. And you're going to take that overall definition, and here we have the larger process definition herein. And this is the QbDVision structure. So we have the downstream unit operation. This is the second version of that, as you see up here in 2.0. And then we'll drill down in each of the unit operations. We have sort of laid out various different pieces of equipment. The parameters are at that level, the materials that we're using, the specific equipment that we're using. So these are all things that if you're in QbDVision, you're used to seeing. And then also we have the steps involved in the process. So the pre-sanitation steps, the load step, obviously that's going to be critical. And we drill in here, and we actually have the parameters that are going into the various aspects like linear flow rate, et cetera. So here's the initial definition that starts in QbDVision. This may be coming over from research. This may be starting from a template. This may be a later version. But the idea is, how do we ship this around? And so to accomplish that, we used a tool from Siemens called Mendix. And here is their enterprise recipe management cockpit. So it's got a couple of different views. I'm just going to give a quick overview of it. And certainly Todd can add more color in here. But this is effectively middleware. So what we did in here is we set up and modeled out two different pieces. First, we modeled out QbDVision configuration. And I'm not going to go into showing the code, if you will. But basically, we got this to understand the object model in QbDVision. So one side of this is understanding what's in QbDVision, and one side of this is understanding what's in Riffyn. Now, the key here is that's flexible if we want to add in other systems, target systems. We've already got it to understand QbDVision or Riffyn. So if we want to move this information around to other locations, it's really easy to do. So this is the layer in between that would be used to set up one time to connect the two systems. And then I'll just switch users here. And this is maybe the experience that an individual user would see. And what they would use the platform here to do is come in and sync the recipes or sync the information between one system and the other. So the idea here is we're designing this out to work, or it's designed by the Siemens team to work with multiple systems. And then QbDVision is one of the applications that's built in here. And then this would be used to sync that over into Riffyn.
And again, the key is application agnostic.
Exactly. It knows our data model, it knows their data model, and then the rest is straightforward. So now we'll jump into RiffynX. So I have over here a list of all the processes that are in RiffynX. You'll see that we have DSP 2.0. That's the one that we just showed there. So this process has been synced down. And here you can see the unit operations that are built out for it. So I have the same unit operations that we saw previously. These are all modeled out in here. These kind of match the same structure and order that you saw here. And then, of course, at a lower level, now each of these unit operations in the RiffynX structure are then set up and tied over. So we've brought in all the steps. Each of these steps has been linked together. That was a challenge that we had to come over in implementation, just from a slightly different model, but we brought down all the process parameters into each step. And now these can be set up, and now RiffynX is a tool where you can do your design of experiments, you can run your analysis, so the scientists can come in here, execute the activities that they need to, and then as this information is packaged up and modified, then that new version can then push back into QbDVision using the same Mendix platform because it goes in both directions. So at the highest level, that's effectively what we've done here. And you can see that we have the entire process. We've got the materials. We brought over the different equipment that's being set up in QbDVision. We have it tied to the different steps. And yeah.
So maybe just to add a few comments. So again, you can see it's mapping the process definition that can be based on templates or process actions. And down below, you would be running your design of experiments. So this is your plan of experiments. And then you would switch over into an execution mode and actually run those experiments. And by running those experiments, then you would actually be either gathering electronic lab data through automation, or by pulling in or by entering in data if things are not connected. And then that data is contextualized because it's against this model. And did you show the version?
Yes.
Everything is also versioned. So we got complete version control. So again, it's all about traceability and version control. And then as you're executing these design of experiments, and then you realize, well, the data analysis outcome is not quite what I was hoping for, you iterate back again and you come in and you change your process definition. So you could either change it here, or you could go all up to QBD and change the template there and then push it back down and then re-execute your design of experiments. Good?
Awesome. Okay, great. All right, so we'll stop here, and thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first one we did there with Siemens was showing how that structure can move into and work with lab data. Next up, we're going to invite up to the stage our friends from Zaether. So Tim Adkins is Digital Life Science and Operations, and he assists life sciences companies to reach their desired business outcomes through digital IT/OT solutions. He has 30 years of industry experience as an IT/OT leader in global operations improvement and support in manufacturing systems design and implementation programs. And Andy Zhang is a data solutions architect, also at Zaether. Andy strives to grow and develop cutting-edge solutions in industrial automation and life sciences. His years of experience within the software automation field focused on bringing innovative solutions to customers which improve process efficiency. So really excited for this next piece, because what we're doing is we're moving now down the value chain, if you will. We started first with how we move information to the lab. Next, we're going to focus on MES. So please come to the stage.
This thing works. Okay, optimize tech transfer through digital systems integration. It's a mouthful, right? That does work, cool. All right, so first we'll do a real quick introduction, which actually Luke's done that, so we won't spend much time there. I will talk a little bit about some of the challenges with tech transfer. Andy's going to spend some time talking about a specific use case with folks that have an existing MES. And then I'll come back and talk about benefits and summarize a little bit. We'll skip that. So just a little bit about Zaether. Again, this is a slide of kind of what we do. We won't get into any details here. If you want to talk about that, come up and talk to me or Derek or some of these others later. We won't get into that stuff. One thing I would want to touch on this one real quick. So we're a consulting company. We're not about We're not a software company. We're not building anything from that perspective, but we're partnering with folks like QbDVision. So the green box kind of represents that. So just kind of keep that in mind. The other thing I would point out is change management. I know we've heard a little bit about that today, but that's a really important part, the organizational change management it takes to actually implement the systems and get the adoption that's needed. So we're really focused on that. Okay, talk a little bit about tech transfer. So who has lived through the pain of a tech transfer? There we go. Who thought it was antiquated and painful? I mean, seriously, could it get any worse? All right, all those pile of documents and all the stuff we had to go through, all the teams all meeting together, right, trying to deal with all the pains all the way through the process. Just a lot of challenge there. And so what we want to do today is just kind of narrow in a little bit, not look at the entire aspect of tech transfer, but focus on kind of that PD to manufacturing. But keep in mind that you've got all the various parameters, CPPs, CQAs, all those things you got to deal with. All that has to be carried through the entire process. So the complexity, right? So again, Word documents, Excel, PowerPoint, PDFs, ton of them, right? They're stacked up all around to get through this whole process. So starting at PD and the lab, pilot plant, going on through to get, again, clinical manufacturing. You got to scale up there, right? So that's one scale up opportunity. Then you got to get to commercial manufacturing. So, now we got to make more of it. So we got to scale up again. Complexity that goes along with that. All the same kind of data, but it progresses and just keeps growing and building over time. Then, we can't make enough of this product at this plant. Now we got to go add it to another. So we got another tech transfer going to another plant. Huge opportunity for, quite frankly, human error and deviations, right? How many times do we have those during the tech transfer process? Really painful. I know a lot of folks, you hear about herding cats, right? I look at this, it's not herding cats. It's herding cats and dogs and squirrels. Oh my. It's horrible. So we're going to talk a little bit about solution we've got. We've worked with QbDVision probably for the last year on this to get to where we are right now. And they've just made an announcement yesterday about that whole thing with the new integration with the new version. So it's very exciting, and Andy's going to talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, Tim. I was going to say spoiler alert, because I was going to cover that. So what I want to show in these slides is talking about one of the use cases that we've developed with one of our customers that we worked with on an MES platform. Not going to say which one, but people who've seen it before probably will know. So what we have here is one of the integration pieces that we've built out, and what we evaluated first is their manual tech transfer process that currently exists. So starting from the top, we're working with the initial data capture, right? Capturing that tech transfer data, and this is specifically an example of exactly how bill of parameter data capture would work. In this case, we have to get that data, got to create the documents, either it's written by an operator in Word or somehow captured in Excel or however it's written. Then that needs to be evaluated and approved by either PD or MSAT, whatever teams that are required to consolidate and make sure that information is contextualized properly. Then from there, it's a team collaboration effort to grab that raw data that's captured and then moving it into that tech transfer data, right? Moving it into a structured, formatted style that can be passed on not only to your MES system, but other possible systems that are going to be using that information. And again, that process is repeated where you need to create those, review it, and then also validate those documents. This all takes a lot of time to build out and a lot of people to get that done. And now you're expanding from not just PD, but you're also looking at manufacturing, you're looking at operations. All of these different teams need to come together and collaborate and make sure that data is properly created. Then finally, moves down to that MES system, right? You want to execute that batch. And moving from there, you have to get that information from the tech transfer that you created earlier, either in Excel or Word, and push it into the system. Some MES systems have an import tool that's available to get that information in, but some others, you might not have that, right? And some of that information might need to be painstakingly written one by one into it, and that takes hours, weeks, who knows how long it takes. And then, like Tim said, a lot of human error is involved in that as well, right? And that's why you need a second person to validate and verify that information. is following the exact same data that you had originally recorded by the operators. Again, all of that needs to be improved and validated. Now, the reason why I'm talking about that is that this is just one of the documents you need to go through. That's just a BOP. But you gotta consider other documents like your SOP, your CQAs, your CPPs. And all of those follow a similar process of data capture methodology. Starting from the manual capture, right? You need to get that information from the operators, either written on a clipboard or some simple Word doc, and then move it into more of a formatted style, which is mapped in either Word, Excel, it could be a database, ELN, whatever is required to get that information in. And then finally, moving that data into a MES system, either manually or importing, but again, all of that information needs to be verified, validated, and ensure that it's properly existing in the system. So all of this in total, overall, takes a lot of time, right? It's not a simple process. Not everybody has the time, and it takes a lot of effort to make all of this happen. So what we've implemented and designed is an integration that allows you to streamline that data capture from your existing manual data that's basically recorded by the operators and streamlining it to the final MES system. This avoids all of those different steps that we mentioned earlier, so that it would basically allow you to do more or less a one-click tech transfer, more or less. This integration allows more of a better scalability of your data and your design, so you can account for basically your current data as well as any future implementations or integrations that you're adding to it. It helps standardize that recipe structure to basically allow for one standard format for your recipe additions. And what recently has been implemented by QbD with that ISA 95 format is basically allowing you that structure so that we can push it into your MES systems without requiring to put much more work into that design. And also, we've actually worked with QbDVision as well, is providing that bidirectional communication between your MES and QbDVision. So not only can you do real-time requests to the QbDVision system, but that real-time data will come out of QbDVision as well with the integration. So real quick, just showing how that flow of integration works. So we initially have an ERP system that does a process request, and that sends it to the MES order management system, which from there, the order management system will send a process request to QbDVision. And then what QbDVision will do is send back a live parameter update that will push the information back to the MES order management system, which then will push it down to some other details such as the workflow execution, some resource editors, and document repositories. And all of that information is captured back into the MES system to make sure that you can execute your batches or your processes. Now, this is one of the examples that we've done integrations for an MES system, but this is very agnostic in the design, and most of the details do still fall in line of what other designs could be implemented for these systems. So in summary, going back to our original slide, a lot of this integration has removed those steps that are initially required. So we eliminated a lot of these pieces that are requiring verification or standardization of that data. So starting from, while we still need that manual tech transfer data to be captured, a lot of these different steps of validating and verifying that data is no longer required, right? Because of QbDVision's version control, as well as that one center for data consolidation. So with all that being said, I want to pass it back to Tim to talk about the benefits of this.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay, so is that exciting stuff or what? Would that make tech transfer a little better? Yeah. Tell you what, if that doesn't fire you up, your wood is wet. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So, I was fortunate enough to spend quite a few years with Bristol Myers Squibb. And during that time, I worked through a few tech transfers, and specifically I was at that time leading, like probably a dozen years, leading some MES implementations across multiple sites. And most of those were basically part of a big tech transfer, right? So we had both a brownfield and a greenfield. And somebody said something earlier about greenfield being easy. No, it's not any easier for sure. So, what's that whole experience did, though, is realize how painful that is. So when we start to talk to these guys about pulling this stuff together, I just got all excited about it because I'm thinking, I would have died for this, you know, just a few years ago. Just not too many years ago, this wouldn't have been possible. So this is just one example of how the benefit works. So kind of the tail end of your tech transfer process, you've got to do your development, engineering, and PPQ batches. Now you got all the data in QbDVision, your parameters, your CQAs, CPPs, all those things, right? All that's in there. And you get those approved. Once those are approved in QbDVision, then they're ready for MES. So now you've drop your order for your dev batch, and now you're off and running. During that dev batch's 40, 50 days cycle, as you find things that need to change, which happens, right? So all of a sudden these values need to change. Now somebody can go back to the process scientist back into QbDVision while the batch is running, make those changes, right? Get them approved, and kind of as the process evolves, those things can happen. So by the end of your development batch, you should be at a place where all those things, or maybe you need another day, right? Maybe you need a little bit of time to get those final things approved. But for the most part, at the end of the dev batch, now you're ready for engineering. You got those parameters approved, drop the order for your eng batch, you're off and running. Same thing with PPQ, right? It's huge, huge opportunity. So, looking at, we eliminated a lot of those tech transfer documents. I can't say they're all gone, but for the, a big chunk of those are gone now. Significantly reduced the time, because how much time do you spend in a conference room and on the shop floor and kind of working through all the details and making sure all that stuff is aligned and getting it into the systems and verifying everything? Huge amount of time. That manual bill of parameter that he was talking about and getting that into your MES. If you have an MES, you know what I'm talking about. Also quite painful. Just again, significantly reducing that overall time. So other benefits. Now you have data, not just data, you got information, you got knowledge, you got things that can really help you make good business decisions, insights that you never had before. When it's all on paper or all in Excel and Word, it's not in the same situation, right? So you got now all this opportunity that you didn't have before. Now you have a platform for collaboration, R&D, PD, MSAT, manufacturing, quality, all in there, working through that, getting the details in there, getting them approved, getting them ready. And then also the leverage, right? So going forward, you've got a huge amount of opportunities, not just with MES is kind of the, just the scratching the surface, if you will. So when you get those data from QbD into MES, MES can then distribute that to the control system that it probably already talks to, right? So you can get your parameters into your DCS, your OEM equipment. And then the next step is even offline testing equipment. So you got to do samples. You got pH, connectivity meter, Vicell, all those instruments are connected. Now you can download that information as well, set points, parameter values specific to that product at the right time in the process. So cool stuff. Now, so we have this framework. You've got QbDVision, you've got ISA 95, B2MML standards, all sounds cool, right? That's a great framework, but the work's not over. Now, you need to, once you get all that in place, you still need to map to all those sites. So you got multiple sites, you got potentially, within sites, you got multiple plants. Within that, you potentially have multiple MESs, depending on the company, right? Maybe one, maybe two, maybe more. Then you add CDMOs in there, and you add multiple customers. Complexity is on and on, right? So again, what you have to do is make sure you're planning. You've got this great tools in place, but you need to plan ahead. You need to get your standard taxonomy, ontology, naming conventions in place, so you can now map to all those other systems. It's a one-time thing, right? You got to map to those, and for any new tech transfer, it's actually an NPI. Of course, you're going to have to go in and make modifications and such, but it's minor in comparison. The upfront planning for this and the implementation, there's some pain involved in that, but the benefits are huge. Thank you very much. If you're interested in seeing a white paper we've written on tech transfer, you can scan this QR code and it'll take you there. Thank you very much.
That's right.
All right, no wet wood. Love it. Awesome. Okay, so last up in this block, once it's loaded, we're going to welcome the Rockwell and Calypso team. Okay, maybe I don't need the slide. Can you go one more for me? Okay, great. Okay, first up, Zaether Mishra, principal at Calypso. He's a leader of Calypso's pharmaceutical, biotech, and CDMO industry practice. Recognized as a thought leader, I actually got to meet him because I read one of his papers and reached out to him, and that's how we started the connection there. But recognized as an industry thought leader, established track record for architecting and delivering transformational digital solutions that have proven business value. And also joining him, Anthony DiBiase, an offering manager at Rockwell Automation. Anthony has over 14 years of experience in the life science industry, focusing on process development, operational technology implementation, tech transfer, fun, CMC, CGMP, manufacturing in biologics, cell therapies, and regenerative medicine. So, gentlemen, welcome to the stage.
Well, thank you, Luke, and good afternoon, everyone. A lot of great conversations, and I think some people have stolen my thunder, so I'll try to make it a little bit interesting. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you accelerate the commercialization process and improving the efficiencies across your entire network. I think several folks have talked about the fact that we're all operating in networks. There's very, very few companies out there that are completely vertically integrated. Maybe there's a few, but most of the clients we work with have a very, let's say, varied set of partners depending on the drug product they're trying to introduce to the market, and they have to work with different modalities. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to make that more efficient, and then Anthony's going to talk a little bit about some of the new tools that we've developed to help make that more efficient. So I'll give you a little quick intro on who we are. So I'm with Calypso, which is the digital transformation consulting organization within Rockwell. We were acquired about 3 years ago. We're fully integrated into Rockwell. We've retained our brand since we've worked with many clients over the years, but work very closely with my colleagues and across Rockwell. We'll talk a little bit about the challenges in tech transfer. It'll be very similar to what my peers have talked about, the current state of tech transfer and some of the challenges that you have to work through. And then Anthony will do a little demonstration of the software itself. So, we help bring digital solutions to the market for our clients across a number of different industries. I lead specifically our pharma and biotech industries. I've been in the industry for a little over 20 years. Actually started at an OEM, and my first job was integrating skids into brownfield and greenfield facilities, and figured out that consulting paid a little bit more, so here I am. So we talk, we consult with our clients on helping them improve the time to market or speed to market, improving quality, increasing yields, both on the drug substance side, but also on the drug product side. And we'll dig into that a little bit. A lot of our work is also focused on harvesting, helping our clients harvest data from the multitudes of systems. I think somebody said about 600 different systems in the R&D space. All of that data is valuable in terms of submission. So we do a lot of work with the regulatory information management, and we do a lot of work with sustainability initiatives, helping conserve energy and resources, and ultimately helping our clients increase profitability. As I mentioned, we're part of Rockwell Automation, but we've all come out of either the industry, so I came out of the industry, or we've come out of the FDA, so we're a unique blend of industry, regulatory, technology, data scientists, and so on. So our mission is to really unite digital data from disparate systems. If you look at any of the facilities or any of the drug product companies, there's a lot of heterogeneous systems in place. I don't think I've ever been to a client that has the same stack of solutions. It's always a heterogeneous mix of various digital solutions, and that's what we help our clients with, is help connect those digital threads together so you promote this notion of data reuse and leverage. A big part of that, specifically for life sciences, is data integrity. If you are operating with hundreds of different systems, and I think Tim was talking about this earlier, there is this issue of data integrity if you're copying, pasting, transcribing data from one system to the other. So a lot of our work is helping our clients establish those pervasive digital threads and helping them reuse and leverage that data. And we do that across all aspects of the life cycle, so all the way from molecule or drug discovery through the commercial development, clinical development, all the way through manufacturing, and then of course on the distribution and pharmacovigilance side as well. So if I talk a little bit about tech transfer, I think it's important to note that the industry itself has evolved over the last few decades from small molecule up to now mRNA and biologics. But a big part of what we're seeing now, there's another pivot happening with cell and gene therapy. So it's this radical shift from producing large batches that can serve a huge demographic of patients to personalized medicines that are either purpose intended to cure very rare, obscure diseases, or they're personalized to that individual's genomic makeup. That inherently changes the way you develop the drug substance, the drug product, and also changes how you manufacture it. So tech transfer of anything is becoming more complex, even with the emergence of a lot of the digital data management systems. Obviously, QbDVision is a great example of that. I think we as an industry are still struggling to find out what impacts do I have to deal with when I go from producing 10,000 liter batches to 20 liter batches. So this is another part of the calculus, if you will, in terms of how we approach tech transfers, that you have to be able to support multiple modalities, an explosion of the network, direct-to-patient delivery of the therapeutic drug substance, and that changes the game in terms of how you approach tech transfer. So just taking a quick look at what the costs are behind this, and I won't go through all the math, but it's, in our estimation, it's about a $5 to $7 billion cost to the industry. A large part of that is because of the latencies in the time. I think somebody had pointed this out earlier, 24 to 30 months. And that's literally what we've seen is the time spent in harvesting, gathering, aggregating the data, verifying it, validating it, and then getting it to work with your execution systems. There's a cost behind that. Now you multiply that by the number of times you have to do tech transfer, all the way from early transfer into the pilot plants, then into clinical manufacturing and commercial manufacturing. We're looking at about $5 to $7 billion industry-wide. That's a conservative number. The number's likely higher than that. I think there's an interesting article, if you guys Google it. Pfizer, when they were running the tech transfer process for the COVID-19 vaccine, had 200 people dedicated to the tech transfer process. While that might work for the betterment of humanity, it doesn't work for commercial drug product. Ultimately, we're all here to generate profits for our companies, and that doesn't scale. So we'll talk a little bit about what we can do to help that. I won't go through this. I think you guys know this in the industry, but lots of tech transfers happen across the product life cycle, all the way from the early stage molecule discovery, and you might be working with the Vujis or Apteks of the world to actually build up the process models. There's a fair amount of collaboration that happens depending on your network composition, and that tech transfer continues. So as that drug substance evolves into a drug product, you create different flavors or variations for different markets. You're continuing to change that and evolve that data to drive it through the network. And of course, you have to create validation batches. You have to harvest that data. You have to submit that data to the regulatory agencies. And you can quickly kind of see how the process can be very difficult to manage. So when we think about tech transfer, we kind of break it up into two distinct components. Drug substance development and management versus drug product development and management. They're very complementary, but also very distinct in the sense that if you think about drug substance development, it's very focused on recipes, parameter management, parameter optimization, focusing on the CQAs, CPPs, CMAs, and so on. And that's what, for example, QbDVision does extremely well, is helping you manage that digital CMC ecosystem. It'll work with LIMS and ELN and so on. But a lot of times our clients forget about the drug product side of the equation, which is kind of a hybrid model in the sense that it's not as focused on CMC as it is focused on taking that bulk drug substance, getting it into vials, getting it into tablets, gel caps, whatever the case may be. And that has the same level of regulatory scrutiny. So in terms of all of the packaging, the IFUs, whether it's in a blister pack, the different labeling requirements for different regions, the artwork, all of the discrete elements is something that you also have to consider. So when you think about digital tech transfer, it has to account for the data that you generate on the drug substance side, but also on the drug product side of the equation. So I just wanted to just briefly touch upon that. Here's a little bit exploded view of that. So we characterize QbDVision to be in the DPC space, or digital process creation space. And as I mentioned, it works with a different ecosystem of digital tools that it integrates with, because it's primarily serving the scientists, the PD organization, CMC, and so on. And that then transitions into the drug product side, where you're taking that drug substance and, as I mentioned before, turning it into either pre-filled syringes, vials, whatever the case may be. But that's also where a lot of the regulatory information needs to be harvested and aggregated so that you have one single repository for the submission of that data. They're not competitive, they're complementary, right? So one, the analog that I always use is, if you think about the discrete world, when somebody's designing a new product, they're using 3D CAD modeling, they're using FMEA, or FEA tools and so on, but it's then feeding into a PLM system for the bill of material management, the broader enterprise change control. It's the same story here, different tools, and that's how we see QbDVision coming together with some of the tools that we're introducing. The one thing I do want to highlight, you'll see towards the top, is digital tech transfer, which is what we're going to get into next. But that layer, the digital tech transfer layer, cannot focus just on drug substance. It has to be able to accommodate both, and that's why I've depicted it in that way, is that there's a ton of information that comes out of that, let's say, the QbDVision, the digital CMC system, but then there's also other data, discrete data elements that may flow from a traditional PLM system. They both have to flow through that digital tech transfer solution. So with that, I'll turn it over to Anthony, and he'll give you a little bit of perspective on how we're addressing both.
Sure. So just a little context. I started at Rockwell about 2 months ago. On my third day, I was introduced to Luke and the QBD team. And so basically my management said, hey, Anthony, you're a PD guy. You know the acronym QBD. You know how to drive process development using the QBD framework. So I was also put in charge to manage the product, the Rockwell's digital tech transfer solution. And so essentially, the idea behind this proof of concept is just to display one use case where we can use these two complementary systems to improve the efficiency of tech transfer. In this particular use case, we're going to go from unstructured process documentation, basically convert that to a structured format in a collaborative platform, and then propagate that downstream to QbDVision.
So as Anthony starts up the demo, I think it's important to mention that there's really kind of two pathways through this. One is you adopt tools like QbDVision that let you author everything digital native, which obviously lends itself to digital data reuse and leverage. But what we'll talk about today is, even if you're implementing QbDVision, you're still going to have, unless you're a brand new startup, you're going to have a legacy of recipes, whether they're on paper on glass, PDF, Word documents, whatever the case is. We've worked with lots of clients that have said, I'm going to implement QbDVision. What am I going to do with my 1,000 recipes that I've either built organically or I've acquired? That's kind of our focus today, is being able to take those legacy documents, use machine learning and natural language processing to extract information out of those documents and make it turn it into something that can reside in QbDVision for further enrichment.
Thanks, Sushin. All right, and so as we go through the demo video, I'm going to try to highlight the perspective of the user that you're viewing, right? Because during a tech transfer, during this collaborative process, you have all different sorts of users. It's very cross-functional activity. So the first step in the process, we have a drug developer who is looking to transfer to an external manufacturer, right? So they would do, looks like we're going a little fast here, but basically they would invite a manufacturer who would then accept that invitation to this network. The next step would then be that the manufacturer digitizes their plant and its associated assets. So in this case, creating a plant and then going into that manufacturing site, going in, creating the different equipment types that are at the site itself, creating different pieces of equipment, identifying those capabilities of the equipment at that specific site. Then taking those pieces of equipment and actually putting them into the physical sequences of the lines at the site. So that way, the drug developer transferring to this potential site, or internally, they know the capabilities that will be available. So here's kind of a key point of the, this is an example of a tech transfer document, and we know this is just one document, and here's a production bioreactor. And the idea here is to create a tech transfer package on this collaborative site. So right now you are that drug developer who's the package creator. What's happening here is you're creating a new revision. You're going to upload that tech transfer document, which you can also do bulk upload. So this is just a simple example of one PDF document, including upstream process to produce a monoclonal antibody. Then what you go in and do, so at this point in time, we've uploaded that document. Now we have a secure repository for that original document that was used for transfer. Then you'd go in and manage the conversion inputs, which would start to allow you to decide how you're going to actually parse the information and extract the relevant data that's included within that documentation. Again, this can be bulk done depending on how those files are configured. So so that could be imported from an Excel file or manually edited within the application. So then once that is complete, then you would actually go ahead and convert that documentation. Again, this can be a bulk conversion into digital data sets. So that has been submitted, but in the interest, that usually takes a few minutes to actually convert. So going in and looking at the actual completed conversion, we now have that documentation in a digitalized fashion where all the relevant information has been extracted and put into a format that then can be easily viewed, and it's now highly structured as opposed to an unstructured document. So then the next step, you'd be able to then go in and edit the information as needed, right? So it's not always going to be exactly as you need it. You might want to clean it up. In this example, removing superscript. You can add additional rows, add additional contextual information. This is all being logged with audit trails. Then, of course, like any process that we know of in a GMP environment, it'll then be checked in and sent for approval by the appropriate people. Could be one person, could be multiple people. So here, after checking the document back in after the edits, it's submitted for reviews. So again, looking at a different persona. So once that's submitted, we'll switch over to the reviewer, who will then be alerted, go in, navigate to that particular tech transfer package, review the information of the edit itself, And this is the fastest tech transfer review of all time. So then after the approval, it is then ready to be used for then downstream systems, right? So we have a native recipe capabilities where right now we've adopted the ISA 88 model where we have procedures, unit procedures, operations. So you can go in and start to build out these common recipe building blocks for the process that you want to essentially take that tech transfer document, the relevant information you extracted, take those tables containing the key information, assign it to those custom recipe building blocks, and then go in further to those tables and start to map the parameters, equipment, materials that was directly extracted from the documents and to start to assign them more contextual metadata. So you would then map those parameters, again, to that common recipe building block. In this case, we're just showing a brief example. But then what you would do is you would then build out all the recipe building blocks that you need for your general recipe, map all the relevant information, and then start to take those common recipe building blocks and string them together to make an actual process, right? So ultimately, you'd have this upstream process with these different unit procedures that contain all the relevant information. You can then arrange the control flow. So take those recipe building blocks and then link them together in the appropriate flow for the process itself. This is a very simple sequential flow, but you can do other control flows as well. And then you would take those, and for specific product, you would create a workflow and then assign that workflow with the actual general recipe procedure that you put together. So here we have our MAB ABC 1234 with its relevant process steps and process parameters that have been extracted directly from the document and put into the workflow. And of course, submit for approval. The final workflow will then need to be approved. Once that is reviewed, again, fastest tech transfer review of all time, it is then ready for propagation to a downstream system, right? So in this case, for our proof of concept, that downstream system was QbDVision, so we were able to directly connect to the QbDVision API to essentially send this in the appropriate schema that we matched together. So from a blank project file within QbDVision, we were able to automatically populate the process that was directly extracted from the documentation with all the relevant information that you see here. So just drilling into a process parameter within that production bioreactor, and you could see the target for the agitation with the lower spec limit, upper spec limit, et cetera.
Thanks, Anthony. How's that for taking all your legacy recipes and digitalizing them? I mean, to me, this is the most ideal way of not only adopting digital native solutions like QbDVision, but also driving massive user adoption by bringing all the legacy recipes into the QbD solution. So, Luke, thank you for working with this, and hope this all made sense.
Okay, well, maybe in keeping with the spirit of the fastest tech transfer you've ever seen, we'll do the fastest closing panel because we stand between you and dinner. But I'll invite our participants back up to the stage. we start to clear. So I was thinking about it as we were listening to the demos. I think each group demonstrated a POC that we've accomplished this year. So I'm kind of thinking about this as our first IND submission. We just got it done, so we'll take a little bit of a victory lap. Congrats to all of you guys on hard work and getting here. I know I had fun. We had some fun with all of you, our teams. And really, I know each of us have our own roadmaps, our own priorities, our customers here that are drawing our attention, but we took some time to sit down and work together, figure out how to connect the digital ecosystem, which is what we heard was really important. So I definitely want to hear audience questions, but the first question I'll throw out to you guys is, what's something that you learned in working together? So what, in this project, in our endeavors here, share an insight that you learned in trying to connect these two systems. And I'll kick it over to the Zaether team to start.
So I think, first of all, we learned that it's possible, right? Which is which is important. And I think it was a very collaborative process. So for me, that's the part that really paid off. I think it was almost organic, I would say. And so through that process, and seeing what could actually be done and where we could actually add value to the overall process, and specifically to the customers. And I know we've talked about focusing on the patients, which is something, when we're in the middle of all those discussions, your mind doesn't go there, but it's always a nice reminder to keep that in mind as you go. So for me, it's simple, but that's what I would say.
Love it. Todd?
I would say, yeah, it was simple, but it's also exciting in that it's the start of data structure. And I think that's something that's, that's really needed in this space.
Love it. Rockwell team?
I'll jump in with saying that, having been in this space for a little over 20 years, it was great to see how easy it is to build those digital ecosystems, right? That's what the industry has been missing is, we've implemented little digital silos, whether it's MES or ERP, and they all have kind of worked together, but hasn't necessarily served the needs of the let's say, commercial execution folks, right? The scientists, the PD organization. So it was great to see that finally come together as a full end-to-end digital ecosystem.
Yeah, we had some fun too, so that was great.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, first question. Do we have one yet?
Question for the Zaether folks. I think you mentioned that you use the QbDVision version control in order to sort of add that compliance level. Presumably that's for the BOP and the BOM. Where do the instructions live in your system? Are they also somehow in the QbDVision, or is that part of the EMS, or is it a third system that would be like a QMS?
Yeah, good question. So for the architecture that we've built out, at least for our one use case design, we've left the instructions to be more or less incorporated into the system with the document repositories that are available in QbDVision. But on the other hand, they are still available and referenced in the MES system that we've integrated to.
Great.
Yeah.
Do we have another question? None. Everyone wants a drink. Oh, we got one. Yashka.
Also to the Zaether guys. So where did the actual data from the S go in the end? Did you also feed that back into QbDVision so that you had the actual values of an executed batch also available?
Yeah, good question. So one of the soon-to-come features that we're playing around with experimentally is called tagging, which allows you to basically reference data from the MES system back into QbDVision as kind of like, how do you say it? It's like a dynamic referencing. So rather than having to manually enter that data from your system, it just goes, hey, this is the reference, and then we're pointing data back into QbDVision. So that was the main idea. Yeah.
Awesome. Any others? Got one. Praveen.
So I know these were.
Matt, sorry.
Sorry?
Good.
Oh, so I know these are pilots, proof of concept, proof of value. In terms of like mastering data and kind of like thinking about how do you have a third-party system like in the future to kind of think about, in the Siemens example, you used an existing Siemens product, but oftentimes like you'll go into customers and they'll be using like low-code integration tools like Pega or UiPath, or they're going to have their own engineering teams that will write orchestration even through things like Airflow or whatever. How have you been thinking about like tackling that problem? And the last question is, do any of the white papers have a kind of like a reference architecture, or would you be willing to share kind of like how you thought through that integration process?
Who wants to take that one?
I'll jump in. Yeah, I think it's very use case specific, and I think it depends on the business outcome you're trying to drive. But what we have seen over the last couple of years is the rise of UNS, or unified namespaces, as a great way to consolidate and define what your common information model structures are between the OT layer and the IT layer. Could you do it without it? Sure, but I think it becomes problematic, and you incur a pretty high level of technical debt if you try to build these integrations as a one-off, right? So that's kind of the high-level answer. I think there's a lot more detail behind it depending on your use case, but that's something that we've been working on for the past few years, is using UNS both in the IT and OT space as a way to unify into a common information model structure.
Great, and I think obviously an opportunity too for the reference architecture. I think that's a great suggestion there. And that's maybe where we can go next. Praveen.
Yes, thank you. My question was really about, for those of us who are working with companies that are not using MES or other kinds of digital systems to run their plants, how would we use your tools to do the tech transfer? I think there was one tool, I think it was a Siemens tool, where the person was invited to come and build their plant in the co-system, so it would transfer that way. But I don't think I saw something from the other two.
Yeah, I can jump in. So I know we ran through the demo pretty quickly, but you saw that it started with the network management piece. Our solution allows you to invite a trusted partner into the solution. It's a SaaS solution, meaning that over time you'd potentially have dozens or hundreds of participants, but they don't necessarily see each other. You have to exchange secure tokens with one another. Say it's kind of like a Facebook request, right? Friend request, right? Either you accept it or you don't. But the whole notion of that tech transfer tool is to define what your network will look like in a very structural fashion, right? So if you have, if you're a CDMO and you're working with the Pfizers, Mercks, whoever of the world, you can point to them and say, hey, I want to work with you. Anybody can initiate that. A CDMO can initiate a request to the innovator or the other way around. And once that happens, you have visibility into the facilities or plants that you want to transfer to, and that's where the collaboration starts. So probably didn't see it in the demo, but it's a critical part of the process, is to make sure that you have a mechanism, a secure mechanism for working with your partners.
Yeah, I'll also add there, working at a cell therapy startup with, 24 people, right? You don't have these sophisticated manufacturing execution systems. You likely have paper, right? So maybe you can use a tool like ours to take the documentation, and I'm gonna go there and extract the relevant information. And we're constantly thinking about the outputs. So maybe using something like generative AI, we can at least get you started on electronic batch records, or even if you want to stick with paper, we can generate at least a usable early stage batch record that can then go through less iterations of, let's say, your QMS review process, right? So starting to think about things like that in our roadmap that incorporate what do these smaller companies need that maybe don't have that high level of automation? Or depending on, like Station hit on before, where they're at in the drug product life cycle. Is it an early stage? Is it just a one-off? Is it a small transfer? Are there only going to be 10 patients? So starting to think about what those outputs look like.
One thing I would add, just did kind of a little bit of a plug for QbDVision, but sorry about that. I think the current tool with the new release gives the opportunity for early steps for digital tech transfer, because just having that tool alone allow you to enter all the data, have all the parameters and everything there. And then there's even, in the new features, I think, is where you can do the doc builder and actually generate a paper batch record, right? So that's a step, right? That's, if you can't do anything else, do something, right? And I think that's the key is to start moving forward. I know there's another person that mentioned that earlier today, but I think that's this key, just, decide, commit, and move forward. Let's start. Yeah, get started.
Awesome. Yeah, and please.
Please finish, Luke.
I was going to say, in theory, all of the solutions that were demonstrated can work across commercial boundaries, so can cross that chasm using the model that we have today. So it would be possible. It obviously takes some work on the CDMO side, but to actually do that cross organizational boundaries. So that was part of the original design thinking for a lot of the solutions. So awesome. Sorry.
No, it's, we need time to celebrate, right? So we celebrate you, I guess. We're here to celebrate the milestones, the possibility,
That's
right?
right.
But I try to come with the next level question as an industry representative. So this is one important challenge, right? The transfer and achieving a submission and achieving, integration in building those knowledge. The second level of challenge for us is now the change that comes through the product life cycle. So there, you name it, numerous. We have equipment changes, we have material changes, we have changes. It's part of the process. And the way we need to demonstrate change oftentimes comes to, okay, if it's an important change, then you need comparability protocols. You need to convince the regulators that when we implement that change, we're not changing the quality, the original quality that was demonstrated through clinical studies. But bottom line, we're going back to what we generated in terms of material and quality when we did clinical studies. If you cannot demonstrate that, you're back to clinical studies, and the industry wants to avoid that because it's for many, many reasons, right? So did we start mimicking that or modeling? How can the digital models that you're having now, the knowledge that we're generating now, can be leveraged in those comparability protocols and go through comparability faster or more, not only faster, because the fastest is the quality and the value and the speed all matters. But how do we learn? What is the value of the knowledge gain here that can propel us faster through change?
Do you want me to take a step?
Yeah, please.
So it's interesting you mentioned that. It's been done before, just not in this industry. Right? So we work in a lot of different industries. Some of them don't have as high of a regulatory barrier or threshold to hit. But from a use case perspective, this has been done in CPG for quite a few years, right? So consumer packaged goods, so think of Procter & Gamble and so on, Unilever and so on. Granted that they have a lower barrier of entry, but from a technical perspective, some of the work that we've done is exactly what you described, right? So I have a defined product, a defined set of process models, critical process parameters, set points, and so on. And what in the CPG industry, materials change all the time, right? I might get materials from 20 different sources, and you have to account for that variability to achieve that level of quality. What we've implemented is a machine learning layer that essentially looks at the historical chain of changes that have been made, because it happens to be managed digitally. If this was paper, you wouldn't be able to do this. But because they have digital data constructs, what the machine learning and AI layer is able to do is compare that data model, that consistent data model, and look at the changes and be able to predict what the impact of that change is going to be based upon what's happened historically with other similar materials or other similar process building blocks. Nobody's really done this in pharma, but I think somebody was saying this earlier, is we should learn from other industries. This is a great use case where we can take what we've done, for the last decade in other similar industries, as long as you can meet the regulatory barriers. Right? Not sure if that completely answered your question.
No,
But.
it does, and there is actually active conversations around this, because with generative AI, you have models that actually learn and can produce solutions for optimization of your process, right? So it's with the right algorithms, with the right in the right boundaries. So I think that is a great way of envisioning how that can be done.
Yeah, and they've actually
I've seen it in small pockets.
yeah, they've actually extended it to the controls layer as well, right? So it's autonomous process control, where those learning algorithms are essentially saying, if you make these changes, right? And it can take input from LIMS and other other systems that are measuring, does the starting material meet the quality, and if it's still within the threshold, if it's on the high end, what set point changes do I need to make? So, for example, in chemicals processing and in consumer products, they're essentially tying those LIMS outputs that are tied to the set points and saying, we will adjust the set points automatically based upon our analysis of those materials. So it's a full closed loop system. And maybe I can have a sidebar with you, but we did this pretty successfully with, believe it or not, tortillas, right? They are very complex in terms of how they're manufactured, and we have a full autonomous closed loop system that accounts for the variability, but you get the same level of consistency and quality.
Maybe if I could the tortillas, that got me. But just give a simpler plug for structured data. One thing that maybe wasn't as clear, which is really interesting. So we think about doing comparability or comparability protocol or versioning, right? What is happening when you have structured data in QbDVision or any system they're in? What we've demonstrated with these integrations is now we're tracking and saying this version of this process got shipped to this MES, was characterized in this system here, was pulled in from this document. It's actually all connected. So no longer are you chasing it down. So when you're building that comparability protocol, you're generating it, right? You're actually just generating it. And then if you tying that into the measurement data or analytical systems, obviously not all of that was demonstrated here, but the sky's the limit there when you have structured data. It's the foundation on which we must start.
Maybe one extra point too. So I also see the future incorporating a lot more digital twin simulations to really define that multidimensional design space of your product or drug. And if you know where if you know the edges, the boundaries of that design space, then you know that you can move a CPP or a CQA inside of that design space, or change out a material if it still acts the same way, or change out a process step if it still acts the same way. So we see the digital twinning really being able to help both reduce design of experiments, but also better define that design space to keep quality where it needs to be.
And I guess one more addition to that, if you have companies that are adopting the quality by design approach in their process development, the earlier they do it, the better. But not only that, as they continue to have new programs, they can then use these platforms to build on prior knowledge so much easier, right? And to say, hey, maybe it's a different, it has a different post-translational modification, it's a different target, et cetera. However, this is my platform, this is my design space, this is how I scaled it previously, this is how I went to this facility, I have this massive data package from my past 10 molecules. This is a new one, let's go, come on. But Let's expedite this.
Awesome. All right, with that, I think we are going to wrap. Thank you guys for all the collaboration we've had. Big round of applause. Thank you guys.